because I've read his books. So.
Okay, so we're live. Thank you very much, Marie-Anne, for organising that. We've got Lynette Favel and Marie-Anne Kannengiesser, and I'm Neil Dougan. And tonight we're going to, it's tonight for Lynette and I, it's the afternoon for Marie-Anne. But we're going to talk about the microbiome, and particularly the route or the pathway to actually achieving an integrated and harmonious and coherent arrangement between the microbiome and the individual cells and the collective cells within a human body. So tissue by tissue and organism by organism. What we're going to talk about tonight, in this interview, in this workshop, in this round table, we're going to talk about what it would mean to actually go on this path, because it's all very well to have this sort of a very high ideal. So it's become quite common knowledge and commonly talked about that we have a microbiome and that it is largely cooperative, and that the old model of it being the enemy and that, something that we need to kill off or at least control very, very closely is going out of fashion. So it is definitely an ongoing process. Like it's popular, it's in the popular media, but nobody talks too much about what it means to actually go on a path towards cooperating with something for which we've held so much fear. So I'd just like to open up the conversation with Lynette and Marie-Anne, and we'll see where this leads us. But it's the path that I'm interested to explore here. How we go about really re-diverting our culture and our approach, our understanding.
Yes, I think one thing is what started with Semmelweis is that the washing of hands was so important during helping somebody or women to at the time of birth. And from there, the idea that bacteria and microbes are attacking the life of a human being is descending, and we still have it in our mind. That you need to wash, that you need to get disinfected so that you don't harm anybody. On the other hand, we know about Louis Pasteur, who said, don't think about the germs and the microbes, think about the milieu. It's all is in there. So both ideas are existing. And then we have Professor Enderlein, the late Professor Enderlein, who said, well, if you really want to have the immune system, you need to have a view on the bacteria and the microbiome, and best is to freeze them and cut them into pieces and take it and get the immune system running by that. And Professor Enderlein always talked about that bacteria and viruses are mutating all the time, that it is nonsense to target a single one. So these are the things we have in mind, at least as doctors or vets, which we grew up with. These are the main ideas. So we have in the doctors, we have those who attack the germs, we have those who think holistic and think of the milieu, and those who are trained in how to help the immune system and think the body can do it itself as long as you don't harm the body.
And I also think there's a really big energy around in our community these days, from probably a lot of the Western medicine perspective, that there is that fear of catching something, catching viruses, bacteria. And I think, that is undermining a lot of immune systems on a lot of levels, and fear as an emotion for, all people is holding back and weakening, our capacity to heal and to be well and to, work with all these organisms that are part of who we are. So
definitely one of our best doctors here in Germany and Austria on this topic of corona said, it's not the coronavirus that's the problem. Fear is the problem. Fear is the disease.
Yes. Several years ago, one of us, as a body talk practitioner, I participated in a session around working with our belief systems about, things being contagious and that you catch diseases. And in my own personal experience, it just changed my perspective, because what we talked about was also that it's not just, you can sit there and say, I don't have the fear, but if you have that consciousness, if it's come through your genetic line, you can change it, but it can still be there in existence. So a lot of people are doing a lot of work around it, but if they don't understand how, the journey that we've had through all the generations, that, that fear is there. So we need to really consciously look at that fear. And, each generation, we can make change, and we can make change for the next generation by understanding that.
I was going to say, that's wonderful, observation that you're making there, Lynette. And, people watching this video will probably be a bit impatient with the idea that the grandchildren might be in a place where they're not so affected by these things. And so, is it an overly audacious target? Is it too much to actually expect that we could come to a place where we had no fear of our microbiome, we had no intentions around harming and controlling it, this notion of control, that we could remove that out of ourselves. I have no doubt at all about, the operation of this fear. And I know how persistent these epigenetic or, ancestral thought processes are. And, if I think about my dad, he was in the war in the desert, the Second War. And because of the concentration of the men and the difficulty with managing, just getting rid of all the sewage and all that type of thing, they had ongoing dysentery. It was an ongoing problem for them, no matter how hard they tried. So, they knew about this disease model of with microbes and that type of thing, but they just didn't have the resources to manage it. And my dad, as we were growing up, all of that experience was just impacted into our lives. So how the culture of the family operated, and the need to wash your hands and after you've been to the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. Very, very potent, extremely potent in the training, let alone the epigenetic stuff. And I go back through the generations. There were all of those kinds of experiences in there. So I get it that it's an audacious idea that we could actually turn this around now. And yet the sense that I have is that with all the talk, Lynette, you're talking about the way in which many people are actually coming to this understanding of this need, or this general movement, the general reshifting. But it's the steps. So you talked about some of the steps, which is let's work on the belief systems, that are sitting there. What other steps could we be taking on this path?
I think, one of the first things is, it's going to be very difficult in a time of this corona time because of the absolute mainstream, printing of all the information of what we need to do. So I think it's a big step in your own consciousness as to, what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept, what you're going to look, for further information. As far as unlearning, that is not a process that does just happen overnight. However, I don't believe it has to take a long time to shift. I think if we gather information as individuals, as a community, we can process through faster and faster. So from the time I began Body Talk and the understandings I learned from that, I now see students do it in so much less time. So I don't see why, as a community, this is an opportunity right now where we can actually throw a lot of balls in the air. And, the more people that understand, so education, we need to bring in, you know, expert people from all different areas to work with people on nutrition. Obviously, nutrition is very important. We have so many different modalities around these days that can really, really support people. So I'm working with people on a daily basis with microbiome, with the emotions, the belief systems. In fact, during this period of time, I've been so busy. So I think there is growing awareness. And I've always for me, it's always been that if we each are doing our work in our little place and our bodies, our own community, and as we do that work, where it's like a spider web, we're moving out further and further. So I believe every student I train, every client I see, speaking, they will speak to more people, and they will learn to listen to their own bodies. And it's something that I think will just be part of where we're going to go, because mainstream medicine, you know, understand it, but they actually don't know how to do it. They've got a few ideas, whereas we've got a plethora of resources, information, practitioners. So if people really want to do it, they've just got to step out of the box. And that's, you know, that's how I started in my healing journey. I stepped out of the box. I realized Western medicine was not serving me. I was a well-trained registered nurse, loved my job, but I wasn't getting results. So I had to go into my uncomfortable and start, you know, working with different things. And I tried many things and some results. But for me, what shifted was when I started to realize I was shifting on the inside, and there was a consciousness shifting. And I was like, oh, and from then on, it was just like information, information, information. So I think like anyone can do it. You know, I don't have amazing educational studies or anything like that. All I've done is been guided by my own intuition. Do have intuition that I've trusted the whole process. And I always go to that first. So, but the information is out there. We just have to be open and be looking for it. So, yeah.
Yes, I experienced quite the same. I was trained as a vet. And of course, you and I, we learned linear thinking. We went by the rules. And after the examination, you and I, we knew that we learned a lot, but we didn't learn how to heal.
No.
It didn't serve. It just didn't serve the needs of the clients. And so you did go on, I did go on. I learned classical homeopathy and traditional Chinese medicine and European phytotherapy. And after that, I learned, or during that time, I learned how to think holistically. And that was the point when I started to understand and began to heal myself and was able to heal others.
Yeah.
So look, you're both talking about these wonderful journeys that you've both been on, and I fully acknowledge and respect, you know, those journeys. And it's a journey of awakening. So it's awakening and actually sort of revealing what's going on inside of yourself so that the understanding can increase. And I must admit to feeling a bit underdressed here, because you guys are both, you know, got a lot of medical training behind you, but whereas I don't, you know, I'm definitely not in that category. But one of the things that I'm observing at the moment is this what I would consider to be a hysterical response in the community to, you know, this whole stuff around a virus. And, you know, despite people talking about things like microbiomes and the importance of them, there's this hysterical response. Now, are we actually looking at a psychological experience that people are just wanting to cling on to something which they have as an epigenetic understanding, or you know, like a deep cultural understanding, societal understanding? are they reacting against this new way of thinking, that it is such a hysterical response? Because what I'm seeing is just ordinary people who would otherwise think about these things. You know, people who would have said to me, you know, eat a peck of dirt before you die. You know, that's an English saying, Marie-Anne, which, you know, basically says you balance yourself by, you know, touching the earth and so on. And, you know, these are people who would have said those things, who are environmentally aware, and they've become hysterical in their response. And I'm just very interested in why it would be that an educated community would all of a sudden turn 180 degrees. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess the topic is a bit bigger. It hits the fear of death overall, and the knowledge of the vulnerability and the impermanence of human life in a body. And in most cultures, death was excluded. It's a taboo.
Mm.
And we are not confronting ourselves with the idea of impermanence. If we would do that, and anybody would tell us there's a virus which could kill you, you would just go like that and say, yes, mate, come or not, I will see. But you can, at the moment, you can torment people with the idea of death. And this is only possible because we declared it for taboo. And something fearful, something unknown, which we excluded from our conscious and knowledge and culture. What would you say, Lynette?
Yeah, fear of death and death being taboo are very, very important topics to me. So, and definitely, yes, that it has been presented as, you know, you will die from this virus if you get it initially. I mean, things have changed a little bit. I know within my own family, I've got a frontline worker, I've got another student, and then I've got elderly parents. And I did actually have a conversation with them about this. And, you know, did they want to isolate? Did they not want to isolate? Because, you know, they were told to stay home, or we were all told to stay home. So, and it has brought up some fears around death and that sort of thing on the personal level, talking with them. But we also made a decision that to live or die, and, you know, we could isolate and they could still die. So for us, we had a, you know, very personal conversation, and we chose not to isolate from each other, and, you know, just to take practical steps. But I also work in aged care where, yes, there's a lot of fear about if COVID came in, how would we be able to care for the residents and that. But it's interesting. I don't see a lot of hysteria in my work environment. Actually, I've been observing quite closely, and I've actually seen probably a lack of even overall concern. I think the community, maybe because I'm in Queensland and we have not actually seen that many cases, but so I'm seeing a fairly balanced approach to it from my end. And of course, talking with clients and that, haven't seen a lot of, you know, panic type energy, but I do see environmental balancing coming up to the energy in the community. And a lot of that is around fear. So, but it presents differently for everyone. So it's quite unique to each person. But how do we move past the fear? I think, you know, we have to keep maintaining, you know, how we're going to look at information and, you know, look at the data and process that through with a consciousness of, we need to be present to what's happening right this moment in our community right now and act on that. I don't know. I don't think we have a simple answer for the history. I think turn TV off would help.
Yeah, well, you're speaking to the converted here. Marie-Anne hasn't had a TV for how many years? 18 years or something. Marie-Anne's not had a television.
No, 25 years. 30 years without television.
Yeah. So that like I'm very interested to hear what you're saying there, Lynette, about your co-workers within the aged care environment, and that they are in an extremely practical sort of state. Especially given that there's the pressures of the family of these elderly people not actually being able to come into the residential care facilities. So like that's extremely difficult, which we did talk about the other day. But even in the face of all of that, your colleagues are not expressing much fear themselves, which I think like that's really interesting. That's particularly encouraging, really.
Yeah.
The question then is, like what we're talking about here is this fear of a so-called bad, microbe, a virus in this case, and we could be talking about some deeply infectious bacteria, of course, as well. We could be having that conversation about that, when the various bacteria that give people trouble or whatever. And if you're certain communities, if you talk about topics like Candida, you can get a lot of very strong emotions and feelings in amongst those communities that are experiencing problems with it as well. So fungi don't get excused in all of this fear situation either, fear and anger and all the rest of it. So one of the things that I'm interested in is that we've got these so-called hostile, I guess you could call them, microbes, whether they be viruses, bacteria, or fungi. And things like Candida would be definitely in this camp. So like we just look at it, and if you mention the word Candida to anyone, all they can think about is the time that they had thrush, or the problems that they've had with their fingernails, or a urinary tract infection or something like this. And then people with a lot of problems will then start talking about issues in their colons or further up the digestive tract, and that there'll be a lot of very strong emotions around it. And when I started doing the work that I've done, the research that I've done with Candida, it was a surprise to me to actually recognize just how hostile these things are viewed. These fungi are viewed as extremely hostile. And what Mariana was talking about the other day with me, I'll re-quote you, Mariana, is that all they're doing is just doing what they do.
They're just extremely capable, not hostile. They're just capable.
Yeah. So is it like, given that something, let's look at something like Candida, which can definitely create all kinds of unpleasant experiences for a human. So you can't deny that. You wouldn't try to actually take that away. But how is it possible then to actually view an organism like that and say it has a place? What are your thoughts?
If you're looking at Candida, it has, yes, we can see a bad and hostile fungus who attacks the skin and who attacks the nails and who attacks the intestines. And if we think further, we see that it can attack the joints and go inside the body, and in extreme cases can attack the nerves. Everything is possible. But at the same time, when I think of a client who has a lot of infection in the veins of the calves, and especially at the valves of the veins, this infection usually is due to some residue, some plaque. which comes there by malnutrition. The only microbe we have to get rid of these plaques are candida. So we need them. The only microbe that has the ability to encapsulate mercury is candida. So if we get vaccines and we have some mercury in the vaccines, the only one that can save us is the candida. So the body needs it. It has a job, definite job to do. And getting rid of it wouldn't end in a good way.
It's about the candida being there in balance with all the other microorganisms. And yeah, if there's too much candida, then it may be presenting as a pathology, but in harmony and balance with the rest of the body, all of our organisms have a role to play. I think, Neil, you mentioned one time to me about bringing candida into your workshop and having a chat to them. And yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Well, look, I'm completely out there, I know. So I'm on the crazy list. And
I'm crazy too.
But yeah, no, look, I've written a book on the topic of the conversations that I've had with candida, and I found it to be the most useful ally that you could imagine as an interpreter of what's going on with the microbiome. Highly intelligent, highly like as a hive mind, just absolutely remarkable. So yeah, no, when I'm using this example of candida, I'm using it, sort of with some sort of sense of confidence about the conversation, because I can just see how useful it is, and well, not only useful, but that it's a powerful entity in its own right, and it goes for all of these microbes. And so, when we're heading forward, if I go back to the 1970s and when I was growing up, and with my dad, with his mania about you got to wash your hands and all that type of thing. The same token, he had us out working in the vegetable garden where there were animal manures actually on the vegetables, and he knew that was all going on, and yet there still was impossible for him to actually divorce completely that training and experience as well. And so even in myself, when I've been doing all of this work, and it's with thousands of plants that I've been working with microbes, and literally thousands, and they, it is such a different experience when you're in contact with them. And I know, Marianne, and you both, know what I'm talking about, when you just over and over and over again, you actually start to, you're hearing the same thing. The information is that we've got a community here, and we need to actually take care of the community. So the next question then is that we have so-called positive microbes. So people view some microbes as being extremely positive for us, and so therefore we want to encourage them as much as we possibly can. And Lynette, what you were just talking about having balance, well, it's not a good idea to have too many of the good ones either, the so-called good ones. So what are your guys' thoughts about all of that? Not only do we need to have a balance, and there's a right time and a right place. So for example, with what Marianne is talking about, if we've got mercury poisoning, which sure, it can come from an inoculation of some sort, but can come from plenty of other sources as well. Same thing with lead, and the microbes are extraordinarily helpful with it. And equally, if we're looking at diet and nutrition, and you're talking about nutrition, and there's no question that the microbial community adapts to whatever food we're actually eating. And yet, we see examples, and we were talking about that case of the atopic eczema. And in that situation, one of the best ways of approaching it, which Marianne has sort of really been on the forefront of is quite an extreme diet, which is very, very limited in terms of the nutritional spread. And yet the microbial community is capable of actually converting, what would be an unlikely food source into everything that's needed. So if we've got the cooperation of the microbial community, we can eat almost anything. But if we are eating, stuff which there's little adaptation or there's little education within the microbial community around actually coping with it, well, then we get sick. There's no question about it. So there's got a whole lot of stuff in balance here. As I see it, we've got a lot of balls in the air. We've got a lot of potential issues which can go wrong, but there's a lot of opportunities that can go right. So I'm going to stop talking because I've just done a great big dialogue. I'm sorry. Or monologue, shall I say.
Yes, I would like to add in to your monologue that I think we are going back to the idea of Louis Pasteur and the milieu, that we have to think about the milieu that is created and the soup where all the microbiome can thrive or not thrive in. And we are creating this soup by eating. And it has a definite acidity or non-acidity to it. And it has definite minerals in it or not in it. And by this, we decide which bacteria and fungi grow and which not. The problem is that we don't know much, that we don't know enough to really navigate it. We only have the instinct to navigate it.
Yeah. I believe instincts are very, very important, because I know just doing my own healing, there's been times where I just feel I need to eat certain foods, and other times, where you just know other foods are just not. And they all come under good foods. I mean, of course, there's your sugar and all your not so superb things, but I even experienced whenever I was going through the end of a process of shifting, where I drink tea, I'll drink lots of teas, but I never put sugar in them. But there'd be one day where I had to put sugar in my tea. And then, this is not microbiome, but what I realized was that glucose is just what my brain wanted at that moment. I only would do it once. And then when I did a lot of healing, and I had a life-threatening disease, and, could have gone Western medicine, chose not to. And I was just totally guided by my instinct, what I juiced, what I didn't juice, whether I fasted. Sometimes fasting was better for me. Bone broths. It just is such a personal thing and so individual. So, I mean, the beauty of the work of Body Talk is that we can get very specific on those sorts of things if we need to, including working with the microbiome, working with the mutualists. And when mutualists become too many, they become what we describe as frenemies. So sometimes we need to bring some other mutualists in to an area so they can balance out and, create the community that will enable that person to heal. But in 3 months' time, that could be completely different again, because there's another part of the body that's trying to balance and adjust. So it's an ever-evolving process, and I don't think there's ever the end.
No. It's a balancing process, which doesn't come to an end. It's homeostatic.
That's right.
And it has to be adjustable to life.
Yeah.
To the daily life.
Yes. So I certainly, there's a lot of ways we can work with microbiome, but each person will be unique. So, and like when people try and change diets as well, it's a process where the community of organisms has to adjust, and you know, sometimes going completely one way very quickly is actually not going to serve the body, and the body may go into a defense mode and, you know, set up other pathologies to compensate. So, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, who are vegan, and that's amazing. But the best vegan I ever heard was a gentleman who's very studied and knowledgeable, but he said, I'm a vegan, but sometimes I supplement with meat. And I thought, how cool. He said, you know, occasionally I need to supplement with meat. But, you know, he always chooses good sources. And that to me was, I just heard that and I just thought, wow, like that is so cool. Because
yes, if the body instinct is working.
Yeah, he is listening to his body.
Yeah.
And
this is something that I learned from animals. If you really listen to the body and the microbiome, they know what they need. And the microbiome knows what it can produce and what not. And for that colleague, it just might have been a shortage of B12.
Yeah.
And the easiest substitution is a bit of meat.
Yeah, whole food. And yeah, probably a lot cheaper than buying supplements.
Yeah. And what I learned from animals with buying supplements and eating supplements, it doesn't really work because we are not so subtle as the body is. It's just too much or too less. We don't get the right milligrams. This is why all the elephants and the animals go to places where they find special salts and they substitute with salts.
Our koalas are very fussy on what eucalyptus leaves they eat. So, and then the baby koalas actually have to eat mum's poo before they can go on to a diet of eucalyptus leaves. So that's microbiome right in there for you.
Yeah. That's a big way. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, like with our, you know, babies that are born through a vaginal delivery and a cesarean delivery, their microbiome is affected. So, and, you know, they are looking at that now of, you know, what can they do to help those babies that don't come down the birth canal and have that experience. And so,
yes, I mean, because they have the microbiome from the skin if they have the cesarean. And the microbiome from the skin doesn't help you in your intestines.
Yeah. So, and like there's awareness of that out in the community, but probably still not more into the, you know, people that are doing different work from mainstream medicine, but they're gradually getting it. And I don't know if there's a fast way. Like having worked in the Western medical system and working in, you know, aged care now, like one of the biggest things is the medicalization of aged care. So, you know, I have residents who've had antibiotics, and then we're seeing it in their gut. But to actually go to that next step of having, well, maybe we could look at replacing microbiome. There's so many ways we could do it with food, but, you know, we don't have the funding, we don't have the resources, we don't have the expertise that we need in there to do the work. So it is definitely a time thing. It's going to take a long time to.
Yes, this is why the Asian people eat a lot of fermented food. This is some kind of trying to regulate it.
Yeah. Yeah, we serve yogurt, but we serve like sweetened yogurt. So it's like, okay, well, that's a good attempt. Not, but yeah, I mean, it comes down to being able to serve all the residents on a certain dollar budget each day. So yeah, but, you know, there was a lot we could do if we could, you know, really get in there and do a lot of, I think I would see like a huge difference in the residents with dementia if we were caring for their microbiome.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So much more clarity, comprehension.
Well, one of the things that's coming through here is the subtlety of this interaction with the microbiome. And you're talking, you're both talking about, instinctive activity. And if we think about the gut brain, which is sort of managing all of this instinctive thinking, it's doing thousands of things at times, if not tens of thousands of things. And so it's incredibly fast, incredibly detailed, incredibly sensitive, incredibly subtle. And something has to hit us with a sledgehammer for this head brain to actually say, oh, I need to go and get a different kind of salt, or perhaps I'm a vegan and perhaps today I should eat some meat. Like, it's a sledgehammer that's hit you to get to that point. And yet there's tens of thousands of pieces of information that are being processed and managed within our system. Highly intelligent. So are we using a sledgehammer to try and fix the problem of a 10,000 small pieces? Are we with what we're talking about, with our attempts with diet and attempts with consciousness and attempts with thinking, are we trying to, is it too simple and too heavy-handed? Is there some other way that we could approach this?
I would say probably. If I think of myself, I'm doing a lot of computer work. I'm a lot under stress. Sometimes I just don't sleep enough. So my magnesia level is dropping. And I can take very good clinical, pharmaceutical magnesia, and I will need high dosage. I will need 800 milligrams per day at least, which is a bit high. But the time I get really good cherries here in Greece, a few cherries served. It's not the amount of magnesia, it's the type of, it's the biological activity. And if I think of taking that pharmaceutical magnesia or eating cherries, I will prefer the cherries. And they work better. Don't know, did you experience something like that, Lynette?
Yeah, definitely. There's always variations of anything that you're taking or that you might be looking for. But I think also the big thing that's affecting our microbiome still does come back to our consciousness, our belief systems, our emotions. And I think if we are working on those things, recognizing when we're being triggered, and recognizing stress and saying, well, how much of this do I do? And when do I step back? And, self-care, I think so much of, sometimes, through my toughest times of healing, I go, okay, diet. And it's like, it's not important. And that's my knowing and feeling and instinct at the time. And it's more important that you just look after yourself, however that is, and it's just okay. And I've just found the more I have healed, the more I've been able to drop a lot of the emotional triggers, and I've still got triggers, I know that. It just doesn't become as, it becomes simpler. So I think we have too much focus on something like that as well at times, where we could just pull back and our body will actually work it out, and that's okay too. So otherwise, I think we can also create more stress for our bodies by being stressful about doing the right thing, or and that's not saying to go out there and eat pizza for 7 nights a week or something, but it's actually like also what your belief systems are around food. And when you take that food in, how does your body use it? So if you believe macas is plastic and will, you know, still be preserved in 5 years' time, which we know they've done experiments, or if you go, okay, Macca's was the restaurant that when I was a child, we used to drive as a family quite a few suburbs to sit down and have a Big Mac together. So on those, it's very rare where I feel a need to go through to McDonald's, but I think about that positive and beautiful family experience, which in those days we had no idea what McDonald's was and we weren't worried about what we were eating. So I think that's important too. I always say to people, if you're going to go and eat something that you feel isn't right for you or isn't for you in your diet, just make sure you enjoy it and, you know, experience it, enjoy, rather than going, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't eat this. Because we're so hard on ourselves. And our body does have an incredible ability to adapt. And, you know, it's not going to hold it against you for the next 30 years. We might, in our consciousness, beliefs and emotions, but I think our bodies are, you know, very forgiving and we know that they can heal. So it's okay. Sometimes I think we just need to be okay. So.
It's a big topic to be self-forgiving and self-accepting in anything and absolutely everything.
Oh boy, I just, you know, hearing you talking about McDonald's, it just really triggered me with a few different things. And one of them was my very first job when I was out of university was as a public health inspector. And so we used to go and inspect all these different food premises and other licensed premises and that type of thing. And we actually ran a microbial lab, so we actually had a lab that we could grow cultures inside our council, and it was a bit unusual at the time, but we had one of the staff was a microbial, you know, he was a microbial sort of specialist, and so we had this lab built for us, and we were very interested in the soft serve ice cream. So this is the ice creams, you know, which comes out of a machine, Marie-Anne. It's very soft ice cream. It comes out whipped. And anyway, we went all around all the restaurants and cafes and all that kind of stuff in Auckland City, and took samples. And you know, there was horrendous amounts of microbial levels, you know, including fecal coliforms and all that kind of stuff, which were sure signs that there was contamination, you know, within the product, except for the McDonald's ones where there was nothing. So like there was nothing growing in these things at all. They had taken so much care with sanitizing, you know, all of the machinery, and so much care with the temperature control over the products that were going into it. The stuff that was going in to make that ice cream was dead. There was just nothing alive in it at all. And it was so surprising to us that we actually went back and took more samples because we didn't believe it. We thought there must have been a problem. And every time from then on, when we took samples from the restaurant, we found that there was just nothing growing in it at all. And of course, everybody, you know, within the public health community was, you know, raising their hands in the air and saying, you know, hallelujah, we found, you know, somebody that actually understands about taking care of our environment, because there was nothing growing in it. And, you know, like it would be a very long stretch to think that we would ask our food establishments to try and introduce microflora into the foods. We would never say to do that, and certainly not from a public health perspective. But it's just so interesting you're talking about that experience that you had as a child, Lynette, about, you know, with that restaurant chain, and, you know, just the potency of the grand family experience that was there.
Mm.
It's just so interesting. You know, the goal was to have what McDonald's had. So the goal of that entire government sponsored industry, which was the public health inspectors, was to achieve what McDonald's had achieved through their quality management systems and so on. That's what we wanted everybody to do. And here the three of us are on this call at the moment. We're saying we've got to encourage these microbes, you know.
Yeah. Yes, and definitely eat not something that no microbiome can grow on.
No, that was sterile ice cream.
Yeah, no, the microbes would grow on it, but they didn't get a chance.
Okay.
There was no chance. Everything was sterilized to the end.
At least when we eat it, they get coated. The ice cream will get microbiome on it.
Very good.
When I heard Lynette telling about this family experience at McDonald's, I was thinking of my granny and the salad my granny did make. Everybody in our family tried to reinvent that salad and tried to get the taste in it. And nobody realized that the taste was in Granny sitting at the table.
Mm.
So once Granny was gone, the salad wasn't the salad anymore.
My grandmother is the same with roast chicken. Nobody can roast chicken and potatoes the way she used to in her little gas oven. And yeah, I always rocked up on Sunday lunch if I was anywhere nearby because it was worth it. So.
But I guess what those grannies did is they gave all the love they had in the food they did make. And that for once granny is gone, the food doesn't taste the same.
Mm.
Even if you have the same ingredients, if you can't get the love in it, it doesn't taste that way.
Absolutely.
So the old grannies would have taken care in every respect. So there was all that love in there, and depending on how much they understood about microbes and that kind of stuff, they would have been washing the vegetables that were going into the salad, Marie-Anne, and you know, the chicken would have been managed in terms of temperature and all that type of thing, Lynette, I'm sure. But more what you're both talking about is that the actual consciousness that went into the food was more important than the food itself generally, and certainly the microbiome. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And at least in my family, you know when somebody is cooking without love and in a hectic and impatience and not really willing to do it. It just tastes bad. And you wouldn't like to eat.
Yeah. Tell me about the impact that you think would be going on with the microbiome based on what we're talking about now. In other words, that the food that we're selecting and preparing and that type of thing has got love and care and attention in it. What's happening in the microbiome as we're eating food? Like taking away the nutritional aspects.
One could say that the granny, when she is in love, wanting to take care of the guests coming, there's coherence. There's a field of coherence, and all the cooking is in the coherence, and probably the food is coherent, and it makes you coherent when you eat it, and the microbiome gets the coherence. And the other thing is, if you're cooking impatient and distressed and without attention and appreciation to the food, it's incoherent. And the whole field of incoherence gets into the food, and the guest will just taste nothing really good, and the microbiome will get all the incoherence. I think it's that way. Lynette, what do you think?
I think, yeah, you'll have more cooperation within the microbiome. I also think then the microbiome is probably going to receive everything more in a frame of nurture, and definitely we'll feel the emotion in the food, because if we're if we're preparing food and not in love and not in, joy, then yeah, that energy will be carried through the food to the microbiome. So then it's not only just having to work with the food, but all of the emotions that it doesn't want to deal with. So yeah,
balanced.
Yeah, out of balance and probably maybe symptoms of indigestion and intolerance.
Mm-hmm. Bloating.
Bloating. Bloating. Yes, I have quite a few clients that like that one.
So if you think of your old people's home and the food that is prepared in the kitchen, and in case the cooks are in distress and don't really like their job, what are the poor people eating?
Yes, so we've seen variations. And where I am, I've been there about 5 years, and I'm very lucky. I have a very good communication with our kitchen, and I managed to pull off a few different things for different residents, and I see an incredible change in them. So even just tonight, I've had the delight of being able to assist one of my residents to eat vegetables that are very, very soft and pureed. And the difference is she has a full tummy, she enjoys it, and she settles. But unless I keep speaking up, it just doesn't happen. But there's good intention, and it's just that systems in place just don't roll over from day to day, week to week, because there's such a turnover of staff.
Yeah.
And sadly, but we had a big shift in food a couple of years ago. It took a lot of work. It probably took 2 years to get to where we got to 2 years ago. And, we're maintaining that, and definitely, our food service is a lot better. So it's, improved a lot. I was going to say, like, we can eat it, but I can't say that because we don't eat the food. But we've had a big change. So, and I think the other thing with all these any aged care is for people to remember that, they can also bring food in. So, and we encourage people to, bring what is their favorite food. And that's especially, even at the end of life, even if they're not eating, they can still taste the food. They don't even have to swallow it if they can't swallow it. But I had a lot of fun. I was actually going on leave, and I knew a resident very well, and I knew her daughter very well. And I knew that they used to go out for a scotch. She loved chocolate, a few other things. And she had a gut obstruction, so she was end of life, back with us. And I reminded the daughter, I said, look, remember that she can still taste these things, and like one square of chocolate is okay, like it's not going to go far. And I go off on my holiday, and I'm getting text messages from the staff I work with going, this lady's gone crazy. She's giving her mum scotch. She's giving her mum chocolate. And I'm at the other end going, yes. And when I came back from holidays, I heard about it all. I'm like, yep, awesome, well done. So, it's just a matter of communication. And
reminds me on the doctor I had in my childhood, and that doctor, he knew that I was bored to death by school, and sometimes I just had a lot of stomach ache, painful stomach, and didn't want to go to school. And sometimes I asked my mother, can we go to the doctor because I just can't go to school? And the doctor, he looked at me, did send my mother out of the room and said, you can stay at home 5 days. And is it okay if I prescribe Coca-Cola and little gum beers as diet? And I said, yes, this is exactly the thing. And then he said, and on top, a bit of books. I said, yes, yes, yes. And he said, private time for you alone in the bed? Yes, 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 yes. And this way I got through school. Reminds me on that doctor. He really understood what the topic was.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, look, I see our time. We should really, be looking at our conversation here. How are we feeling at the moment in terms of this approach, the approach on this journey towards a real cooperative, collaborative microbiome? What are the real lessons that are coming forward today that you can see?
It's all very, very subtle. By instinct, we can do a lot. And there's more about appreciation than I did realize till today.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of it is going to be instinctive. I think also, like those of us that do work in an area where we have a voice and we can share, keep sharing the message. So, because people are looking for answers, and even if you share the message with 5 people and only one person hears you, we've still created a change, and that's going to resonate through for everyone they meet. And yeah, I mean, we can pioneer anything. So I've pioneered body talk in Australia, and microbiome is a big part of also the work we're doing now. So we're continuing to pioneer it, just as homeopaths are, and lots of people. I mean, chiropractors, I think acupuncturists. There's so many different and mainstream, medical. They want to understand it, but we have to understand they don't get the education. So, they really, they lose that opportunity unless they choose to go and study elsewhere and, create that knowledge for themselves. So we need to be not unkind to them. We need to.
So appreciation and kindness towards the medical system and the whole structure that sits around it. You've been crashing back to me the memory of going to those McDonald's restaurants. I realized that it's not just the medical community, it's this whole government structures, which I was a part of. I was a part of that government structure, very limited in the perception of the need for a diverse microbiome, extremely limited. And but we need some kindness. We need some kindness and appreciation of the education system and so on and so forth. If I think back to when I was training as a public health inspector, there was we studied microbiology well. So we got a lot of microbiology in our training, but there was nothing in there about the microbiome. What it was how bacteria operate, how funguses operate. It's the whole pathology was the study that we did.
Yeah.
And so,
I had an amazing microbiology book. I loved it. But yeah, it was all about the pathogens. It wasn't anything about healthy, part of how the system works. So yeah. And, so many of the diseases that people do have fear around, are actually part of our microbiome. And, our general approach to health will take care of that. And that, some people carry different organisms that will be pathogenic to some, and other people, it will never disturb them. So just looking after yourself, looking after your immune system, and, supporting everything the best way we can. And yeah, our systems do need kindness. But in that kindness, it doesn't mean we don't speak and we don't, share and we don't say what needs to be said. So because nothing will change. There will be conflict because, you know, from the conflict will come hopefully resolution and understanding and a chance to collaborate and move forward.
Oh, very good. So have you got any parting comments, either of you?
For me, the essence of today is there's a lot about appreciation than that I can and better. I could do better in each direction.
Well, for me, the big lesson is what you were saying, Lynette, is that, you know, you just talk to whomever and, you know, share a bit of this information. And if a single person is transported to a new way of thinking, well, then that's enough. And to have that kindness from ourselves and so on, so like that would be, you know, it's a lesson that you've given me, Lynette. I'm very grateful for that. So thank you. But how about you? What was your sort of takeaway thought here?
Takeaway. I think just the approach, just like keep it simple, keep it within what is achievable within your current place in life, and one day at a time, because every day you make a change, you move, you know, a further step into a better balance. And I had to really accept that when I was, you know, dealing with quite a serious illness, that it had taken me many years to get there. So, excuse Zoe, she's ready.
Who's that?
So that as long as I was taking a step away each day, further and further, that was okay. So, sorry, Zoe works with me. She's
Who is that? Who is that?
Her name is Zoe.
Zoe?
Zoe. Say
hi. Hi, little one.
She comes to work in dementia and she sits on this table every session I do, or under the table if there's a
very good.
Yeah. So she's telling me it's bedtime.
Oh, bedtime. Okay, you better go. You better go.
She works works on the floor with me, so with all the residents. So she's also very, very clued in, and yeah, if she goes and stands outside a door, I go and check it out. So, you know, when people need something. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much, both of you, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk again soon.
It was great.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.